Hey everyone, and welcome to the Deep Dive. A lot of you out there are always looking for ways to improve your English fluency, and so today we're going to take a deep dive into a really cool article called 7 Ways to Quickly Improve Your English Language Skills.
It's super popular.
Yeah, over 1 million views, and they just updated it in August, so it's definitely fresh and relevant.
Yeah,
So we're not just going to skim the surface here. We're really going to break down these so-called hacks
exactly.
and understand why they work.
Yeah. Because, just telling someone to watch movies isn't really like a magic solution, right?
Right. Okay, so let's dive right in. Hack number 1.
Yeah.
The classic, the one we've all heard, watching movies and TV shows.
Yeah.
I mean, I know this one's been around forever, but I'm really curious from your perspective, why is this so effective?
I think it's about immersion. It's about going beyond just textbook English. When you're watching something in English, you're not just hearing the words, you're absorbing like the natural rhythm, the pauses, the way native speakers actually use the language in different situations.
Yeah, it's like the difference between reading sheet music and hearing a song performed live, right? You pick up on so much more than just the notes on the page.
Exactly. And with movies and TV, you get the added benefit of visuals. You see the facial expressions, the body language, all of that.
So it brings that language to life.
It brings it to life, yeah. And it helps you to understand those more subtle nuances that textbooks can't always convey.
And the article actually had this really interesting example. They compared watching a David Attenborough documentary, which, he's got that beautiful, clear voice,
Oh, yeah.
versus a fast-talking sitcom like, I don't know, Friends or something.
Right.
And they said both are great for learning, but in very different ways.
Oh, yeah.
Attenborough, of course, is brilliant for pronunciation. His enunciation is so clear and deliberate.
It's almost like a master class in pronunciation just listening to him.
Right. But then on the other hand, you have the sitcom. You're thrown into the deep end of everyday slang, idioms, humor.
Oh, yeah. It's real-world English. Trying to keep up with the jokes in Friends, it's challenging, but it's where the learning really happens.
It's that real-world application.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you can combine the two, you're getting such a well-rounded exposure to the language.
Absolutely. You're getting the best of both worlds.
And don't forget about subtitles.
Yeah.
I know some people are kind of anti-subtitle, but I actually think they can be a great tool, especially when you're starting out.
Yeah, especially for visual learners,
Yeah.
because they allow you to connect the spoken word with the written form.
Oh, that's so true.
It really reinforces those connections in your brain and helps with both comprehension and pronunciation. It's like having a built-in decoder ring for the language.
Love it.
So, the main thing to remember is watching movies and TV shows. It's not just mindless entertainment. It can be a powerful tool if you use it strategically, right?
Right.
Choose different types of things to watch, different genres, and pay attention to the nuances and the details.
And don't be afraid to use those subtitles.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've kind of tackled the entertainment side of things.
Yeah.
Let's move on to hack number 2. This one is all about reading diverse English news sources. Now, I know for some people, reading the news can feel a little bit dry, right? But the article makes a really good point about the benefits.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this one.
Reading news is a fantastic way to expand your vocabulary, and it exposes you to more formal, sophisticated English. You'll encounter words and phrases that you probably wouldn't hear in everyday conversation, which is great for, developing a really strong understanding of English.
And I think what makes news feel dry is when people force themselves to read things they don't care about.
Oh, totally.
The key is to find sources that align with your passions, right?
Absolutely. If you're fascinated by science, dive into National Geographic. If finance is your thing, The Economist will expose you to a whole new world of financial jargon.
It's like a crash course in business English. And don't forget all those amazing online magazines and blogs that are out there.
Oh, yeah.
Literally something for every interest, from fashion to technology to travel.
Right. The key is to diversify your news diet.
Love that. Diversify your news diet.
Don't just stick to one type of publication. Mix it up. Explore different writing styles and different perspectives.
Okay, so we've explored, the visual and auditory aspects of learning with movies and news. Now let's go back to basics, shall we? Hack number 3 takes us back to school days. It's about starting a vocabulary book.
Oh, the good old vocabulary book.
Now, I have to admit, when I think of vocabulary books, I have these flashbacks of those endless lists of words and definitions.
Yeah.
It felt more like a chore than anything else.
Right.
So I'm curious, how can we make vocabulary books work for us in a way that feels more engaging and relevant.
It's not about just rote memorization, right? It's about creating what I like to call a personal word vault, filled with words that you can use whenever you need them. Imagine each word is like a tool that helps you to express yourself with more precision and nuance.
I love that. A word vault.
Yeah.
And I think, we've all had that experience of recognizing a word but not really knowing how to use it in a sentence.
Yeah.
Like, I might understand the word tantalizing, but would I actually be able to use it naturally in a conversation? Probably not.
Right. The article mentions this. It's the difference between passive and active vocabulary, right?
Oh, interesting.
You might understand a word when you read it or hear it, but can you actually use it when you need to?
That's a good point.
That's the real challenge, isn't it?
It is.
And that's where a vocabulary book can be so helpful because it helps you bridge that gap between passive recognition and active usage. So yeah, don't just flip through a vocabulary book and try to cram all those words in. Really take the time to understand each word, its nuances, the synonyms, maybe even the connotations, and how it's used in different situations.
Don't be afraid to get creative with it.
Oh, absolutely.
You can use flashcards, make mind maps. You could even write little stories using those new words.
Exactly. The key is to personalize it. Find a method that works for you and that keeps you engaged. Remember, building vocabulary, it's a journey. It's not a race. It's about slowly but surely enriching your language, one word at a time. So welcome back to the deep dive.
We were just talking about those 7 amazing tips for boosting your English fluency.
Yeah.
And I think what really struck me is how the article kind of framed these tips as like hacks.
Yeah, I like that.
So what do you think it is about these strategies that make them so effective?
Well, I think that word hack really captures the idea of finding a clever shortcut, a smarter way to achieve your goals. And when it comes to language learning, there are definitely some techniques that can give you a real advantage, help you speed up the process.
It's like having a secret weapon.
Exactly. And these hacks often involve tapping into your natural interests and learning styles. So it becomes less about, forcing yourself to study.
Right.
And more about having fun with it.
Yeah, totally. Like we talked about earlier with finding news sources that align with your passions.
Right.
If you're obsessed with tech, diving into, I don't know, Wired magazine is going to feel less like studying and more like indulging in your favorite hobby.
Totally. And it all comes back to that last tip we talked about, making learning fun.
Right.
That's the key ingredient that keeps you coming back for more.
And when you're enjoying the process, you're more likely to stick with it, which is ultimately what leads to real progress.
Yeah, consistency is key.
Definitely. And speaking of progress, I think one of the biggest hurdles for a lot of language learners is overcoming that fear of speaking.
Oh, for sure.
It's like there's this mental block
Yeah.
that prevents them from just opening their mouths and letting the words flow.
It's so common.
Why do you think that is?
I think a lot of learners get caught up in this idea of perfection. They're so worried about making mistakes that they're afraid to even try.
Right.
And it's understandable, but it's also a major roadblock.
But isn't making mistakes part of the learning process?
Absolutely. Mistakes are inevitable, and they're actually incredibly valuable.
How so?
Every time you make a mistake, you're basically identifying an area where you need more practice.
It's like a signpost pointing you in the right direction.
Exactly. So instead of seeing mistakes as failures, we should embrace them as stepping stones on the path to fluency.
I like that. Stepping stones.
And remember, even native speakers make mistakes.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Nobody's perfect,
Yeah.
And fluency isn't about achieving some unattainable level of flawlessness.
Right.
It's about being able to communicate effectively and confidently, even if you stumble over a few words here and there. So true. How do we encourage people to let go of that fear and just start speaking?
I think one of the most powerful techniques is simply to practice as much as possible, even if it feels uncomfortable at first.
Okay.
Find opportunities to use English in real-life situations,
Like what?
like chatting with a friend, ordering food at a restaurant, or
Yeah.
giving a presentation at work.
Right.
Just put yourself out there.
But what if you're not surrounded by English speakers in your daily life?
There are still plenty of ways to practice. You could join an online language exchange group, connect with other learners through apps,
Oh, that's a good idea.
or even just talk to yourself out loud.
Talk to yourself. Really?
Yeah. Don't underestimate the power of self-talk. It might feel a little silly at first, but it's actually a great way to Practice forming sentences, experimenting with new vocabulary.
And getting comfortable hearing yourself speak English.
Exactly. It's like having a private rehearsal before you go out on stage and perform in front of an audience. Love that analogy.
Yeah.
Speaking of rehearsals, you mentioned earlier about recording yourself.
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
That's another really great way to practice and get feedback on your progress. You can listen back to your recordings and pinpoint areas where you might be tripping up, and then focus on those specific points.
It's like having your own personal language coach, but without the cost.
Exactly. And one more technique I want to mention is called shadowing. Have you ever heard of this one?
It sounds familiar, but refresh my memory.
So shadowing is basically where you listen to a native speaker, like from a podcast or an audiobook, and you try to mimic their pronunciation and intonation as closely as possible.
Oh, okay, I get it. So it's like you're their shadow, following their every word and trying to reproduce those sounds. Exactly.
It might feel a little awkward at first, but it's an incredibly effective way to train your mouth and your ear to produce those authentic English sounds.
It's like building muscle memory for your tongue.
Exactly. Think of it like a musician practicing scales or an athlete mimicking their coach's movements.
That makes total sense. And it seems like a relatively easy technique to incorporate into your daily routine, right?
Oh, yeah. You can do it while you're walking, commuting, even doing chores around the house.
Multitasking at its finest.
Ooh.
And as you get more comfortable with shadowing, could you even record yourself and compare your pronunciation to the original speakers?
Absolutely. It's a fantastic way to get objective feedback on your progress.
I love how practical and actionable all of these tips are.
Yeah,
It's not just theory, it's stuff you can actually start doing today.
exactly. Small steps, big results.
Speaking of taking action, let's circle back to that tip about questioning everything.
Oh, yeah, one of my favorites.
It's all about going beyond that surface level understanding, right?
Absolutely. It's about cultivating curiosity, that thirst for deeper knowledge.
So instead of just memorizing a definition,
Right?
you're really digging into the why and the how.
Exactly. You're asking, why is this word used in this particular context? What are the subtle shades of meaning? How does it connect to other words and concepts?
It's like you're peeling back the layers of an onion, revealing all of its hidden complexities.
And the more you explore, the more you discover. And that's what keeps the learning process exciting and engaging.
It prevents you from getting bored or feeling like you're just going through the motions.
Exactly. And one thing I hear from a lot of language learners is that they feel overwhelmed by the sheer vastness of English. Like, it's got this huge vocabulary, complex grammar rules, all these subtle nuances, and it can be a lot to take in.
Yeah, it's definitely a journey.
But the key is to remember that you don't have to learn everything at once, right?
But take it one step at a time.
Exactly. Break down those larger goals into smaller, more manageable chunks.
So instead of trying to memorize the entire dictionary,
Right.
maybe you focus on learning, I don't know, 10 new words each week.
Exactly. Or maybe you decide to focus on improving your pronunciation of a specific sound that you find challenging.
Right.
Just break it down into bite-sized pieces and celebrate those small victories along the way.
Because those small wins build momentum and keep you motivated.
Absolutely. And speaking of motivation, one of the best ways to stay engaged is to find ways to incorporate English into activities that you already enjoy.
Yes.
Like, if you love music, listen to English songs and try to figure out the lyrics.
Oh, I do that all the time.
If you're a movie buff, watch English films and pay attention to the dialogue.
Right.
If you're a gamer, switch the language settings to English.
It's all about finding those natural connections between your passions and the language you're learning.
Exactly. When you can do that, it stops feeling like work and starts feeling like a natural part of who you are.
It becomes more organic, more integrated into your life.
And that's when the real magic happens,
Yeah.
when learning becomes a joyful exploration rather than a tedious obligation.
I think we've covered some incredible ground today, from those 7 fantastic tips, those hacks for accelerating your fluency,
Yeah.
to some deeper strategies for overcoming challenges and staying motivated.
We've only just scratched the surface, though. I know, right? There's so much more to explore.
The world of English language learning is vast and ever evolving.
But I feel like we've given our listeners a really solid foundation to build on.
I agree.
Before we move on to the final part of our deep dive,
Yes.
where we'll explore some additional resources and insights to further empower your English fluency journey, I have a question for you, dear listener.
A question to ponder.
Think about your English fluency journey.
Yeah.
What's one specific area that you're most excited to focus on right now? Is it expanding your vocabulary, improving your pronunciation, or maybe gaining more confidence in speaking. Whatever it is, write it down, make it tangible, and commit to taking one small step towards that goal today.
A small step today can lead to big results tomorrow.
We'll be back in just a moment to explore some additional resources and insights that can help you on your path to fluency.
Stay tuned.
All right, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive.
And we've been talking about all these amazing ways to boost your English fluency. One of the big takeaways for me has been this idea of immersion.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the more you can surround yourself with the language, the faster you're going to start seeing those breakthroughs.
Absolutely. It's about creating an environment where you're constantly exposed to English, even when you're not actively studying.
So it's not just about those structured lessons. It's about, finding ways to make English a part of your everyday life.
Exactly. And there are so many easy ways to do this.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Well, think about your daily routine. Are there any places where you could naturally incorporate English? Like, what about switching your phone's language settings to English?
Oh, that's a good idea. I thought about that.
It's subtle, but it can really make a difference. You'll be surprised how quickly you start picking up new words just from navigating your phone.
Yeah, those little vocabulary nudges throughout the day.
Exactly. Or how about listening to podcasts in English while you're commuting or working out?
Oh, I love podcasts.
Yeah. It's like having a conversation with interesting people while you're on the go. Plus, it's a great way to get exposed to different accents and speaking styles.
Oh, that's so important, right? Hearing how English is actually spoken in the real world.
Absolutely. And there are podcasts on literally every topic imaginable, so you can always find something that you're actually interested in.
Yeah, I love that.
And remember, immersion doesn't have to be all serious and educational.
Oh, good point.
You can have fun with it too, you know?
How so?
Well, think about movies, TV shows, music, all of that can be part of your English immersion experience.
Yeah, it's like watch your favorite movie, but this time in English.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to revisit things you've already enjoyed. Watching a familiar movie or listening to a beloved album in English can be a whole new experience.
Yeah, because you're not so focused on trying to understand the plot. You can really pay attention to the language.
Right, and that familiar context can help with comprehension too.
Now, another way to really immerse yourself is to, actually connect with other English speakers.
Absolutely. Find those opportunities to have conversations, even if it's just small talk.
So like joining a language exchange group, going to meetups, maybe even just chatting with people you meet in your daily life.
Yeah, it's all about getting out of your comfort zone and using your English in real-world situations.
It can be intimidating, I know, but it's so rewarding when you actually have those real conversations.
And sometimes the most unexpected encounters can turn into amazing learning opportunities.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like I once had this really interesting conversation with a taxi driver who turned out to be a poet from another country. We talked about language and culture and storytelling. It was such a cool experience.
That's awesome. See, you never know where you'll find those little moments of connection.
And it reminds you that language is about so much more than just words and grammar. It's about connecting with people, sharing ideas, and seeing the world through different lenses.
So true. Speaking of seeing the world, have you ever thought about traveling to an English-speaking country?
Oh, that's the dream, to really immerse myself in the culture and put my language skills to the test.
It's a fantastic opportunity for growth, both linguistically and personally.
What do you mean?
Well, when you travel, you're exposed to new perspectives, you challenge your assumptions, you broaden your horizons in ways you never imagined.
I can see that.
And even if you can't physically travel right now, there are so many ways to create that virtual travel experience.
Like how?
You can explore online resources, connect with people from different cultures through social media. You can even take virtual tours of famous landmarks and museums.
So it's about being a tourist in your own home.
Exactly. It's about tapping into that curiosity and using technology to explore the world from wherever you are.
And it's important to remember that the journey to fluency isn't always linear.
Right. There will be ups and downs, moments of frustration, and times when you feel like you're not making any progress.
Yeah, that's so true.
But the key is to keep going, to celebrate those small victories, and to never lose sight of your goals.
Because even those little steps forward are still steps in the right direction.
And remember, you're not alone on this journey. There's a whole community of language learners out there who are going through the same things.
So don't be afraid to reach out, connect with others, and support each other along the way.
Absolutely. We're all in this together.
Well, it's been amazing diving deep into this topic with you today.
It's been a pleasure.
I feel like we've uncovered some really valuable insights and strategies for taking your English to the next level.
And remember, every step you take, every word you learn, every conversation you have, it all adds up.
So keep practicing, keep exploring, keep having fun with it, and most importantly, believe in yourself, you got this.
You absolutely do.
This has been The Deep Dive. Until next time, happy learning.